Afternoon and welcome to the TSA Innovation Task Force Virtual Industry Day. I have to say that we are very excited to have you join us today. I hope that you find our lineup today engaging, and we look forward to future conversations. Again, thanks for joining us. Very excited to have you. The first thing I'd like to do is toss it over to our Chief Innovation Officer at TSA. He is focused on enhancing the experience of not only travelers, but our transportation security officers in the field. And he's always interested in hearing about potential new processes and technologies. Prior to joining TSA, he was with Deloitte Catalyst's Government and Public Services as a domain manager, bringing emerging technology to their ecosystem from startups to venture capital at all levels. Let's toss it over at this point to Dan, our Chief Innovation Officer.
Thank you, Matt. Making sure that my video got up. If you guys are all wondering what happened to the nice young man sitting there on the screen, you're asking the same questions that I am. Thank you for having me today. I'm very excited to be part of this industry day. Really looking forward to hearing more from vendors and non-traditionals about what they can bring to TSA in response to some of our problem statements. So I'd just like to open up by saying, TSA was obviously born from crisis and in response to a national security effort. And I think one thing that COVID has shown us is that we have to now broaden and expand what we mean when we say securing the traveler and what we mean by aviation and transportation security. So in response to COVID, we will definitely be embedding a new level of innovation and agility into the way that we operate. And as Matt said, one of the ways that I view my role as incoming Chino is really focused on three main pillars of how we'll be bringing innovation to TSA and engaging with our partners. So one is obviously our workforce engagement, and that is soliciting input from our TSOs and our frontline workers so that we can make sure that new processes, new technologies meet what they're seeing in the field and really go to support them and make sure that they feel they can deliver their job to the best of their ability. How can we use technology to augment our workforce so that they can be a little bit stronger and a little bit less taxed in delivering their core mission? Additionally, we know within ourselves that we have some foundational capabilities that we should be developing to make TSA a good partner for innovation and a good partner for industry. So where do we get independent funding streams? How do we do capability acceptance so that we can be pulling things from industry a little bit faster, either through authorizations or legal authorities that we gather? And then most importantly for what we're doing here today, a big focus of mine will be partnership development for the next few years. So the world that I came from, as Matt mentioned, was really focused on building ecosystems on behalf of clients. And I'm more than excited to be doing that now on behalf of TSA. So how do we work with everybody here? How do we work with non-traditional vendors, traditional vendors, VC, academia, to break down our problem statements in a way that we can work with partners to solve them, syndicate those investments, and make sure that we are advancing technology forward, not only on behalf of TSA, but on behalf of our partners in aviation and the passengers themselves. And luckily, every conversation I've had thus far, people look at TSA as this large leading organization in aviation security that they want to see successful and they want to kind of see lead the way. So how do we put ourselves in that ecosystem and cement ourselves as the forebearer of new technology and new innovations? We can do that through either open architecture campaigns, we can do that through prize challenges, and through industry days like today. So with that, I know I'll be handing it over to Stacy and the rest of the team to really go more in depth into what we're looking for today and with BAA5. But I just want everybody here to know that I'm on board and excited to be partnering with you all, and I'm an open door. So any way that I can make your coordination and efforts with TSA more successful, don't hesitate to reach out, and I'm more than excited to be working with you all going forward. So thank you. Stacy, I think it's over to you.
Thank you, Dan. I'm going to jump in real quick and do a nice intro. Thank you, Stacy, for joining us this morning. She is the Executive Assistant Administrator for Operations Support within TSA. Prior to that role and in her past, she served in a variety of roles At one point in time, she was with an airline. She's also served in a technology innovation and acquisition office with CBP. So innovation is in her blood. She's also been a smattering of deputy assistant administrators in different roles at TSA. And so we are very excited to have Stacy join us this morning. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Matt, and Dan, thank you for your comments as well. And let me say thank you to everyone that are participating in today's virtual industry event. I'm just really excited that our team was able to do this and kind of keep things going without missing a beat in what I know has been a very disruptive world for us over these last number of months. I thought I'd start though by taking a step back and one, acknowledging that when people think about TSA, they think about what we do in the airports and certainly the leader that we are in aviation security. But we are responsible for much more than just US airports, much more than just aviation, and we have responsibilities across multiple modes in transportation. Also, we do vetting of passengers, we do vetting of insiders that are working within the transportation system, and we've got also a global presence. And so, pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, a typical day for us would look like vetting 2.5 million travelers every day. We have over 25 million credential holders. These are these insiders who are working within the transportation system, and we're vetting them to help combat kind of the insider threat. And we've got inspectors and international representatives who were working around the globe to ensure the security at over 280 last points of departure before those passengers and flights boarded to come to the United States. So our presence in our scope is pretty significant. But the reality is that in the last 6 months, it has been anything but typical. And that's obviously due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We saw travel volumes tank in mid-April. I think the number, the record low was roughly just under 85,000 passengers per day. When you think about that in comparison to 2.5 million that we had been seeing, that's huge. But what we are starting to see now is recovery. And I think that's really exciting and encouraging and something that we're paying a lot of attention to. Roughly, it's about a 2.5% increase week over week right now. The last 2 weekends, we've seen some, and I put these in quotes, record numbers, record in terms of where we bottomed out and how we've recovered. And we've peaked about 840,000 passengers per day the last 2 Sundays. And we're really looking at, what those trends continue to look like, working with industry to understand what those forecasts are to ensure that we're prepared and ready to meet those demands. Like probably many of you, this pandemic has impacted TSA personally. We have had over 1,600 employees who have been confirmed with cases of COVID. Unfortunately, we've had 6 employees who have actually lost their lives to this disease. But we are looking at the positive here, where we're seeing some of the trends in the infections go down and really reducing the gap between the number of employees who have recovered. And so that's important for us. But what we've been doing really through these last number of months is finding out and defining that new normal for us. We want to instill confidence in our workforce. We want to instill confidence in the traveling public that the transportation security system that is out there is safe and secure, not just from what we have been thinking about in traditional threats, but also what we realize now, certainly in this health crisis that we've been facing. And so a lot of our efforts to date have been focused about modifying our procedures, our policies, physical and infrastructure changes to address that. And really where we're going is how do we continue to evolve those? How do we continue to look at technology as a way to embed, to support those objectives of a more efficient and effective security system. And we're really grateful to have partners like you are right there with us to help us innovate and find creative ways to advance our screening systems, not just to address that threat to aviation, but also to the health and safety that is so important for our frontline workforce as well as the traveling public. I thought I'd just take a second too to acknowledge, I think, the tremendous work that our Innovation Task Force has really done beginning back in 2016 and leading the efforts for partnering with industry, partnering with non-traditional stakeholders to find innovative solutions to address our problems and really be able to more rapidly address and close capability gaps that we have. And you're here participating with us today in this next iteration of broad agency announcement. We put out problem statements seeking your input to help us address some of the most challenging areas that we have. In our last submission, I think we received over 23 proposals from 21 unique vendors, and also many of which were coming from small businesses. That's pretty exciting for us. And you're going to hear a little bit about those past, but also what we're focused on for this broad agency announcement. And I'll just touch on it. One of which I think is certainly timely with the pandemic and the things that we've been doing, but how do we support safe distance screening? The other is how do we provide a system integration for dynamic screening? This is something that's been near and dear to me for a long time. Right? It's a lot about the automation and connecting our systems and also bringing in and connecting those with what we have embraced in terms of a risk-based model of security. I like to say we're trying to work smarter, not harder, and bringing these things together. And also I mentioned a little bit about our vetting and the credential workers that we do, and that's focused on the insider threat, but also how do we advance this in terms of the actual screening of those staff really within the aviation environment. So we're very excited and looking forward to your ideas in this space. So with that, just a reminder, I think our submissions and our announcement for this broad agency announcement closes on September 7th. So please make sure you get your submissions in. And again, many thanks to you for what you've been doing. Many thanks for your ideas and opportunity to innovate and collaborate with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, EA Fitzmaurice and Chief Innovation Officer McCoy. Very excited to have you join us this morning. Great information. To give you an overview of how the afternoon is going to run, we'll go into a little bit more of the TSA and Innovation Task Force context, and then we'll move right into information about how we run our demonstration activities and give you kind of an understanding of kind of the process that we walk through each of the vendors that we partner with for demonstration. We'll move towards our overview of best practices and submission techniques that you'll use in order to be able to apply to the broad agency announcement, the idea. And then we'll have some panels that will highlight each of the problem statements that are key to understanding the opportunities for engagement in this cycle. And then we'll take some question and answer at the end. Thank you. So as TSA and as EA Fitzmaurice and Chief Innovation Officer McCoy hit, TSA has three big tenets of the administrator's intent, and those are around kind of the things that we want to try and work on in terms of how we modernize and move forward, strengthening our partnerships and collaborating across industry to better deliver the capability of screening and security. We want to make sure we move quickly and accelerate our time to accelerate action and get out into the field as rapidly as possible. Innovation Task Force has always been a key component to moving quickly into the operator's hands and the operational setting. Getting into an airport environment is really important to us. And we also want to try and make sure we account for and consider the human element in all of those activities, whether it be the passenger experience that they have in screening or the end user experience as an officer and how they experience screening and how they interact with the system. As an operational context, we have some numbers here on the slide that will give you the overview. On a normal day, we would screen 2.6 million passengers, as EA Fitzmaurice mentioned. We cover domestic flights and over flights of the United States. We vet millions of people every day. That's kind of the typical setting. However, with our COVID operations, we've seen a drop in those numbers, but we've been able to maintain effective social distancing through procedures and changes in the checkpoint. And we're up to, on average now, about 650,000 passengers, with quite a large number of carry-on items that we're continuing to screen and vetting those passengers. Just to give you an idea of the context for TSA. As we move into that, let's talk a little bit about kind of some of the approaches that we've taken for COVID response. And for that, we have the Operating in a New World response coordinator, if you will, for RCA, Requirements and Capabilities Analysis, Melissa Conley, joining us this morning to give us an overview of the key actions we've done in the checkpoint and for our officers.
Thanks so much, Matt, and thanks for having me here today. So starting in March, we got together with the capability managers and really broke apart each segment of the screening process. And we did that to take a look at, the procedural changes that we could change, as well as the technology enhancements that we can make to create a more, socially distant and less touch environment. And so as a result of all of that work that we've been doing since March, the checkpoint looks a lot different. And so I'll go over a few of the key changes that we've made to our checkpoint. And so more lanes are open to keep wait times down. We don't want passengers, bottled up in queue lines and waiting for screening. We have implemented social distancing throughout the entire process, so getting rid of those serpentine queue lanes, as well as promoting social distancing between passengers and our officers throughout the entire process. Our officers are wearing PPE. They're wearing surgical masks or N95s. They're wearing gloves, and they're changing their gloves frequently. Passengers can also ask our officers to change gloves, before they receive a pat down. Our officers are also wearing face shields or eye protection when they're not standing behind an acrylic shield barrier. You can now bring 12 ounces of hand sanitizer with you, but you'll have to divest it, which is a great relief to the traveling public. And we've developed an enhanced cleaning standard where we're cleaning high touch surfaces, cleaning the equipment upon each rotation for our officers. And then also we've implemented an hourly bin cleaning as well. I mentioned earlier acrylic shield barriers, so we entered into a contract with Lifecycle Industries to get some of our CADX and hotspot airports outfitted with acrylic shield barriers at some of our highest touch points. So at the divest, before you go into X-ray screening, and then also at TDC, those acrylic shield barriers are currently getting deployed. And then we're actually in the midst of awarding a follow-on contract to outfit the rest of the field with those acrylic shield barriers at the high touch points. So additionally, what we did to communicate all of this to the field, because there's been a ton of changes that we've implemented, is we developed a communicable disease response playbook. And so that playbook houses all of our PPE requirements, all of our procedural changes. It's got specifications for the acrylic shield barriers. And then we've also implemented an infection control monitor position. And so that position at every shift ensures that our officers are wearing the proper PPE, that they're practicing social distancing, and they promote proper hygiene as well. They also make sure that passengers are keeping their distance as they go through the screening process. I talked a lot about the acrylic shield barriers, so we'll skip over that for now, and then talk also about the international industry engagement. So we've been communicating a ton, and especially with our global partners, we've talked to about 20 countries about what they've been doing in response to the pandemic. We've been sharing information. We've shared our playbook, our specifications for barriers, our cleaning standards, et cetera, to our global partners. And then we've also been talking a lot to the associations about everything that they've been doing in response to the pandemic. And so I'm really interested in hearing what you guys have to offer us as solutions to create a more socially distanced and less touch environment. And with that being said, I will pass it off to Mario Wilson, who's going to take you through the solution intake channels.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I wanted to take this opportunity to just briefly go over the myriad of intake channels that exist today for all sorts of ideas and proposals, especially those that are innovative, and many of those we'll talk about today. I want to talk about a lot of the opportunities you have to submit that. So what you see in front of you right now are 6 specific areas where we at TSA are engaging with you or with others within the government to look at innovative ideas that are out there. If you look on the far side to the left, you'll see the opportunities that are available for mature and commercially available solutions. In the middle of the screen are the opportunities that are more appropriate for systems or solutions that are ready for demonstration, likely in the airport environment or the operational environment. And then far to the right are the 2 opportunities that are more appropriate for systems or solutions that still need some development and some research, but could inform a lot of our requirements or our existing acquisition programs. So going back to the left, you'll see that the Department of Homeland Security has a new commercial solutions opening pilot program that they've initiated. And as it stands right now, that's going to continue to be open until the end of this month, and it may get extended. But we at TSA are working with the Department of Homeland Security to review submissions that you and others may submit for solutions that may be appropriate for TSA or other components within the department. And depending on how those reviews go, those solutions may come to TSA for continued and a deeper review of what those solutions are and how they may fit into our space. The TSA engaged procurement, which is the second one you see, is something that TSA specifically initiated in response of COVID-19. And since we initiated that, we've really merged as much as we can that effort with the DHS CSOP program so that not only does TSA get an opportunity to see what you have to offer, but other components in the department may be able to see that as well. Focusing on the middle of the screen, you'll see the TSA TSIC BAA. That's the Transportation Security Innovative Concept BAA. It's open all the time, and it's available in case you want to submit any ideas or proposals to us that we may consider. The ITF Idea BAA is what we're talking about today, so I know we'll talk plenty more throughout the next hour and a half about that. Looking to the right, you'll see that we work with the Department of Homeland Security's Science and Technology Directorate. One program that we're really interested in is the Silicon Valley Innovation Program. That's an opportunity that allows some promising technology and solutions to receive some funding up to about $800,000 over a 2-year period in phases, depending on the appropriateness to continue to the next phase. And after 4 phases, if the information or the solution looks extremely promising and ready to go to an operational environment, then the phase 5 may be available to go beyond the $800,000. And then lastly, we've been working with the Department of Homeland Security Science and Technology Directorate to look at their tech scouting. They've been very helpful looking at solutions out there, informing us what works and doesn't work. And a lot of that will also inform requirements for our existing acquisition programs or likely new acquisition programs or procurements that we may need to pursue immediately. Along the bottom, you'll see all the points of contact. If you have any questions, so feel free to utilize those points of contact if you have questions about submissions and deadlines or timeframes. The next slide highlights something that we've recently put together and we've initiated in the most recent weeks to really have a framework to take in solutions that need to be reviewed and decision made as fast as possible. So you'll see all of those opportunities that I just went over on the left side of the screen. What we're looking to do is, as appropriate, if it's an urgent solution that really needs to be implemented, take those solutions that are coming in from those intakes and then quickly look to decide whether we really don't see a fit for that solution for TSA right now, in which case we would reject that proposal, or we'd accept it and then go to the next phase to get a little bit more information. Or if the solution looks ready to go, absolutely fits in our mission space, we may be interested in going direct to a select transition phase so that we can procure it. If we progress into the preliminary review phase, that's where we would ask for a little more information. And then based on the review of that information, we would decide if we would decline now that we've had more information, or we would refer to the appropriate TSA office. And if that's the case, we would ask for more information so we could have more engagement with you with regards to your solution and how it fits into our space. You'll see there in section 3, the different dispositions that could come out of that vendor engagement. I would say that as we go into demonstration, acquisition, and procurement of the bottom 3, that's really where a lot of things can be ready to go a lot sooner than later. And as appropriate, we may put them in an airport environment to see what they can do. And either that may lead to a procurement, it may lead to a longer acquisition that could be in place for a while, or it could be informing some requirements that we would want to incorporate into our existing acquisition programs. And overall, that's a lot of what we're trying to capture from an outcome in section 4, which is where, as we go through this entire process, we're communicating with you along the way, but trying to take any good solutions you have and do something as fast as possible with those solutions, whether it be to procure it or implement it into existing programs and then put it in the airport as soon as we can. This is, again, something new that we put in place. We're trying to see how it will work, and our plan is to keep this in place going forward so that in situations such as COVID-19 pandemic, we can utilize the avenues for intake that are already there, but quickly review them, make a decision, and hopefully get that capability out into the operational environment as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mario, for joining us from Acquisition Program Management. Very exciting to have you with us today. To zoom in a little bit closer outside of the TSA context and COVID environment, I want to talk a little bit about the Innovation Task Force and its founding. For me, it's been a place that you can go and continuously ask why not? Why do we do it the way we do it? Why can't we do it differently? Or how do we think about different approaches and options? And we were founded in 2016 with 3 kind of pillars within our mission. We wanted to collaborate because we recognize that most of the innovation work that we're doing can't happen without input from all of the folks within the ecosystem, whether that be passengers, vendors, airports, airlines, other government partners. The collaboration component to our mission is one of the most effective, I think, ways that we get new conversations started, new understandings, and lessons learned. We have a second pillar that's demonstration. This is an effort where we try and get out of the lab environment and into the airport, into a place where there's a lot of variables, a lot of things that you can't predict, and really get an interaction going between the technology and the capability and the solution, the process that we're looking at, and the officers that are using it on a day-to-day basis, as well as the passengers that are experiencing it as they prepare to travel. The demonstration process is something we rapidly try and get to, and couldn't be done without the final phase or final pillar, which is the assessment. I always like to quote, Mythbusters, the difference between science and messing around is writing it down. And so one of the things that we take very seriously in Innovation Task Force is having a test approach that documents our lessons learned, both from a human factors and interface perspective, documenting the human performance elements of the capability, but also characterizing the system with a variety of metrics and data points to understand the performance, both in a lab setting as we characterize it for baseline, and then in a commercial operational environment. As we look at the ITF in terms of responsibilities, we seek to demonstrate emerging capabilities relatively rapidly and get those into our operators' hands. But we also want to be able to diversify and expand our industry base. Many times innovation is simply the reapplication of something that works in another field. And so we've seen a lot of demonstrations be very successful that were things that may not have been part of the aviation ecosystem or transportation world prior to an innovation conversation or engagement. And so this is an exciting opportunity to be able to expand to new industry components or partners. And, example today, doing our industry day via this platform, we want to be able to engage and go beyond that. That reminds me, if you look at the bottom of this video broadcast, you'll see a link. We need you to register. We'd like to know you're here. We'd like to know who's represented here on the YouTube live broadcast. Ordinarily, with a regular broadcast or regular interaction, we'd have a physical presence and we'd have registration done. And with a virtual environment, we can open the doors wider than we have before, but we need your help in making sure we understand who's here so that we can engage with you in the future. We send newsletters on a quarterly basis, and we love to get that out there. on the final piece about our responsibilities, we take our understanding about the interaction and the intersection between the capability, the people, the process, and we drive requirements. After all, we sit in the requirements and capabilities analysis organization, and you can see there's two processes outlined below at the center of the screen. The acquisition directive that we follow as a framework, and the system engineering lifecycle. ITF primarily agitates around those areas. We're humans and we like to know what the process is, and things normally follow step by step. But for innovation, we like to be agitators that get beyond kind of the process, and we'll take on things that may be relatively mature, and we have an opportunity to do lessons learned and continuous process improvement. Or we may take on things that are complete opportunities and capability gaps in order to inform and better develop requirements as we enhance our delivery of capability for the user. With that, I think we're ready to move into an understanding of our demonstration lifecycle. And I'm going to turn it over to Lucy Ryman-Snyder, a program manager within Innovation Task Force and currently the acting branch manager for demonstration management and execution. Lucy.
Thanks, Matt. Happy to have you all here today. As Matt said, I am Lucy Ryman-Snyder, the acting branch manager for ITF's Demonstration Management and Execution branch. Our branch managers will lead the demonstration of your solution if selected. So as Matt said, ITF seeks to demonstrate capabilities, not permanent deployments or formal procurements. However, the 4 stages of demonstration here allow us to make an informed decision for transition, which I'll get to in a moment. ITF follows 4 general stages of a demonstration. As you can see here, cohort initiation, pre-demonstration, demonstration, and post-demonstration, with the goal of gathering operational data to inform future requirements. A typical ITF demonstration timeline is 6 to 8 months from start to finish. So to get a little bit more into the different phases, cohort initiation begins with identifying the capability gaps and developing our problem statements for the BAA. From there, we focus on raising awareness and advertising the various open solicitations by hosting events such as today's Industry Day, in addition to ITF's takeover of TSA's social media that occurred last week. Once a solution is selected, an ITF program manager will orient you with the overall process and begin demonstration planning by ensuring solution readiness and coordination with the vendor and initiating the integrated project team, or IPT, that will include all relevant TSA program offices. We have a series of key deliverables throughout the pre-demonstration phase. They're noted with an asterisk there, such as developing a concept of operations, as well as identifying additional tests, assessments, or cybersecurity scans that may need to take place. One of the main goals of a demonstration is to make it to a live operational environment. ITF currently has 16 innovation site airports that are ready and waiting to demonstrate new technologies. The IPT and the vendor will work together to ensure the appropriate location is selected, in addition to determining demonstration readiness, associated training, installation activities, and data collection, which will include both human factors and operational testing. At the conclusion of the demonstration, ITF will develop a closeout report based on operational and assessment outcomes, which will include one of the 4 recommendations for what's next. The recommendation is presented to the transition committee, which is comprised of leadership from acquisition program management, information technology, contracting and procurement, and one other that I think I'm missing. I apologize. So the 4 selections here, the 4 recommendations. So not at this time is recommended when the capability does not meet our needs and will not be pursued further. If it requires additional research, it's recommended when a solution is viable, but it needs some additional work in order to mature and be ready for procurement or acquisition, such as hardware or software developments. Procure is a recommendation to procure on a limited basis, such as buying a few units or working with acquisition program management to ensure the solution capability is added to the capability acceptance list. And acquire means that we recommend that this goes through the full acquisition lifecycle. Next slide, please. As you can see here, ITF has demonstrated a wide range of capabilities, such as accessible property, digital communications, and identity management. And we work with each of these capability managers throughout the demonstration lifecycle. You'll be introduced to the capability managers a little bit later today. The accessible property screening portfolio has had the most visibility to date, as many of the demonstrations have led to direct acquisition and deployment, such as computer tomography. Additionally, automated screening lanes, or ASLs, were ITF's first demonstration and have since been deployed in airports nationwide. ITF also just wrapped up 3 digital communications demonstrations, the Adobe Connect Totems and Virtual Assistants, and is supporting a TSA-wide initiative to leverage digital communication as part of the agency's COVID-19 response. Lastly, we have demonstrated biometric travel document checker, TDC, solutions, and have recently closed out the enhanced document inspection demonstration, which also led to a nationwide acquisition. Next slide. ITF is currently in the process of demonstration planning for 4 solutions selected from the BAA4, focused on training, alarm resolution, and field information systems. This has been an interesting cohort for ITF as we're exploring newer capabilities such as virtual reality and geospatial imagery, in addition to co-leading a few demonstrations with TSA's Office of Training and Development. All the BAA4 solutions are in various stages of pre-demonstration activity, with some solutions having a slight delay due to the pandemic. We have been presented with unique challenges during this BAA, such as travel restrictions and personnel availability, and many pre-demonstration activities that would typically happen in person are now being conducted via virtual hosting platforms. However, the flexibility of our demonstration lifecycle allows us to think creatively about workable solutions in order to meet critical deadlines. So with that, I will hand it over to my counterpart, Mr. Steve Yoda, who is the acting branch manager for solution management and execution, to provide a more in-depth overview of the BAA selection process.
Great, thanks, Lucy. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Again, thanks for joining. As Lucy said, I'm going to provide some quick information on our broad agency announcement, our submission and selection process. So first, starting with the broad agency announcement, or the BAA, this is ITF's primary contractual vehicle that we use to engage and solicit industry for emerging capability demonstrations. We have other vehicles that we can leverage, hackathons, prize competitions, things of that nature. But the BAA has been the primary contractual vehicle that we've used going back to 2016. With the BAA, we release a set of problem statements that are shared with industry and specifically focus in on the capabilities that we're looking for that specific release. For those of you who have been following the ITF since our inception in 2016, hopefully you've seen an evolution of our problem statement process. Our first BAA had one problem statement, one large problem statement that essentially asked for anything and everything that was related to the safety and security of civil aviation. So in improving our efficiency, our effectiveness, passenger experience, et cetera. Starting with BAA2, we then moved into a more robust problem statement identification process. And we've continued with that through the remaining BAAs up to BAA5 where we are now. To develop our problem statements, we engage and solicit senior leaders from throughout the organization to discuss their capability gaps and their capability needs. And from there, we determine what's suitable for that specific BAA release. Again, going back to BAA2 and the evolution of the problem statements and the specific BAAs, BAA2 had 9 problem statements, BAA3 had 7 problem statements. The most recent BAA4 went down to 4 problem statements plus an RFI, a request for information related to real-time wait time. And then BAA5, our current BAA, has 3 problem statements plus an RFI for staff screening. And so, hopefully the message is getting through and resonating that, the ITF's role within ITF is to generate a constant state of learning for the agency. We want to be aware of the ecosystem of security equipment and emerging capabilities and what industry has available and within the pipeline. And to do that, we've really identified that, throughout the year, throughout the calendar year, throughout the fiscal year, we really have to have a demonstration, multiple demonstrations going through our demonstration life cycle. And to do that effectively, we really noticed that we have to release multiple BAAs throughout the year, which is something that we're trying to do and get better at. And so as we've released BAAs, that decrease in how many problem statements and what we're looking for has become more targeted, so that we can release more problem statements and more BAAs throughout the calendar year. Moving on to the submission and the selection process. So once a BA is posted, the first thing we do is we engage industry and obviously make them aware of the problem statements. We have a pretty robust industry engagement program. We have great partnerships and relationships with other components within DHS, such as S&T, Customs and Border Protection, the department itself. And we typically will attend and participate in industry or trade association shows, whether it's PTE, FTE, CES, events hosted by AAAE or ACINA, et cetera. Obviously, the current environment we find ourselves in today, we're hosting this virtually, and we're hoping to continue with our successful industry engagement and the efforts that we have there. So as a vendor, if you so choose to submit a capability demonstration white paper to us, again, the closing date of that is Labor Day, so it's on September 7th, that Monday. Once we take all of the submissions that we've received, we send those to subject matter experts throughout the organization. And again, we make sure to specifically include subject matter experts that were used to identify the specific problem statements that were released. And we make sure that we have a wide range of subject matter experts that are able to review and assess the demonstration white papers through their specific lens. So we make sure we have representatives from our civil rights and liberties, information technology, security operations, those who actually represent the frontline workforce, et cetera. From there, we receive all of that information back from the reviewers, and we look at and assess a natural cutoff point so that the white papers that meet a certain level, those that are above that level, we will reach back out to the vendor and request a more specific set of information, a capability demonstration proposal. This information is a little bit more specific in that we ask for the vendor's recommendation on how would you like to see the capability demonstrated in the field, what's the information that you're specifically looking for, and what's the benefit that you're looking to achieve in your partnership with TSA and the ITF. That information and that capability demonstration plan is briefed to ITF and TSA through 10-minute vendor pitch sessions. And the TSA folks that we have that participate in those vendor pitch sessions are the senior leaders that we originally engaged to help us in develop the problem statements. And then from there, we go through another round of down selection and ultimately identify solutions for demonstration. Not on this slide, but just general awareness for the vendors that are selected for a technology demonstration. Within 1 to 2 months after being selected, the ITF looks to host a solution provider orientation where we invite you and your company, a few representatives of your company, to visit us at headquarters, and we are able to introduce you to the specific project manager, program manager within the ITF that will be leading your demonstration. We introduce you to some of the key members that are part of the working groups from the other offices within TSA that, again, will be working with you. And we also go through some of the initial documentation that we'll need in order to establish the relationship. Examples, non-disclosure agreements, sensitive security information training, and things of that nature. So that effort is really one that's been created through a maturation process on our end, looking at how we can speed up the phase from selection to active demonstration lifecycle and getting the demonstrations up and running. The entire submission and selection process, when it was first created and first exercised, it was something that took, around 2 to 3 months. But as we've continued to mature and evolve, it's now something that we look to complete within 4 to 6 weeks. So again, for the vendors, for those of you who do elect to submit a proposal to us, we hope to have final selections within early October. So hopefully that provided a little bit education and awareness of the BAA and what the process is moving forward. And so without further ado, I will hand it over to our program manager who has led the problem statement identification and BAA process for us to go over the problem statements themselves. And I will hand it over to Anka.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning, everyone. I'm Anka Alexandrescu. I'm PM in ITF, and I'm excited to present to you briefly today the problem statements that we released on July 1st as part of our IDEA BAA. We are looking forward to receiving your submissions. Stay tuned as we have the 2 panels that will further expand on these topics and will be able to answer your questions. So on the screen, you see 2 predefined problem statements, and the third one allows the vendor to submit innovative solutions to what we call vendor identified problem statement. So if you have identified a significant challenge and you have a solution for TSA that addresses that challenge, you can submit your white paper under this category, vendor identified. All right, so the first problem statement we have defined is related to safe distance screening. We're soliciting industry to bring forward innovative solutions that will enhance the TSA screening operations to sustain and scale the reduction in spread of infection diseases. In this context of social distancing, how can we drastically reduce the physical contact between passengers and officers? But we're taking into account not only person-to-person interaction, but also person-to-property contact. So we're looking to reduce contact across the board in our screening environment that covers checkpoint space, both primary and secondary screening, to include divestment screening in the recomposure area, but also the checked baggage screening areas from all the perspectives. From a different side point, we're aware that we cannot eliminate contact altogether. So when interactions still take place, is there a solution, an innovative technology that can eliminate the risk of disease transmission? So this is in a nutshell, a brief description of the safe distance screening. The second problem statement is related to system integration for dynamic screening. So how can TSA create an integrated screening environment?
Okay, I think we lost you. Sorry about that. Coda, you're jumping in?
Yep.
Or?
Yep, I can take
Great,
it.
thanks.
Apologies, everyone. With this being a virtual event, obviously anticipated that we would have some hiccups and road bumps along the way, so we apologize. We apologize for that. So real quick, I think Anka was just about to get over to system integration for dynamic screening. So for this problem statement, what we're really looking for are capabilities that allow us to network our transportation security equipment, as well as provide real-time data reporting back to headquarters. One of the eventual goals of TSA in our screening experience is that as we have different passengers with risk profiles come through our security checkpoints, instead of having to have separate lanes for different risk profiles and the passengers of those risk profiles, the equipment is able to recognize that this individual, based on their vetting status, is low risk, and the capability, again, the security equipment is able to dynamically switch to a different algorithm that is applied to that passenger on person as well as in property. And again, from a dynamic reporting perspective, as you can imagine, there's just never-ending amounts of data, mission data that's generated from the field related to the screening operation. And so a lot of that data is manually captured. So having our frontline workforce actually go through and capture the data off of the equipment and then report it through our reporting systems. But what we're looking to have hopefully in the future is that equipment capture that data autonomously for us and report it in real time, and removing the human element from that process so that it also removes the opportunity for human error. Our third problem statement is vendor identified. So this is a catch-all. So this is an opportunity for vendors, if you think you have a solution that is really great and is something that we should look at. It helps us with our effectiveness or efficiency or the passenger experience. This is the category by which you can have it submitted or submitted under. And then if we go to the next slide, the last, I won't say problem statement, but the last part of the BAA for BA5 is a request for information on staff screening. So TSA recently released our insider threat roadmap, and so with that, TSA is interested in capabilities that are available within the vendor community that would help our stakeholders, i.e. the airlines, the aircraft operators, the airport operators, airport authorities, help them in the screening of their own employees at the airport. This screening could take place at a specific employee screening checkpoint, or the screening could take place at a direct access point, at a door that you see that is, a primary access point that employees may use to get from one area of the airport to another. So, staff screening is whether it's static or mobile. It's something that is typically today done on a random and unpredictable basis, but is looking in the future to be something that's more sustained as we move forward. And so to provide a little bit more information related to this RFI, we have two senior leaders from TSA to provide some additional context and information. We have Alan Paterno from PPE, Policies, Plan, and Engagement. He's the manager for airport engagement. And then we also have Director Bob Pryor of our intermodal division within requirements and capabilities analysis. So first, we'll hand it over to Alan for some additional information.
Well, hey, Steve, thanks for having me today. And I won't take up too much of your time. I see that we're doing pretty well on the clock, so I'll get right to the point. So TSA and industry perform a variety of different staff screening activities already today. Like you just said in your previous statement, we do a lot of these at employee portals inside, different portions of the airport proper, if you will. In the future, we hope to see a dramatic increase in staff screening activities, whether they're voluntarily done or whether it's through regulation. And with the introduction and the expectation to have more staff screening done, we would like to see more explosive detection systems and technologies applied to that inspection process. In most cases today, the person in the property, they undergo some kind of a physical search, and explosion detection is used when and where it's available. Our goal is to increase the baseline, the absolute minimum right now, which is the physical search. We'd like to up that baseline and basically have more frequent usage of the explosive detection technologies, not just when they're available. I mean, we actively want airports to go out and purchase these systems and apply them during the screening activities. So what we're looking from the vendors today, what we're looking for are your systems that are relatively lightweight, portable, easy to use, and of course cost effective. That was all even before the pandemic. Now with the pandemic, we make it a little more difficult with our ask, because not only are we asking for, all the same things, lightweight, portable, easy to use, cost effective. Now we want to use them from a distance. I guess the easiest way to put it is, we're trying to have the same type of screening, but have social distance between us, or, as Melissa talked earlier about some of the efforts that TSA is doing to move into touchless inspections and screening, we'd like to take advantage of this time to make the same ask. So really, Steve, from my perspective, that's our ask in a nutshell. So unless you have anything further, I'm going to turn it over to Director Pryor.
Nope, that's great. I appreciate it. And with that, we'll hand it over to Director Pryor.
Hello, everyone. Today, thanks for joining today. My cam will probably pop up in a little bit. Some of you might be saying, gee, to this point in the briefing, we've been talking about airports and airlines. So why all of a sudden are the multimodal, intermodal people in this brief? Couple reasons. In the preceding slide, you should have taken and seen, and I'm not going to read the slides to you, obviously, there were some keywords to pull out of there. Thanks. One is surface security, the other is airport, and the third is cargo. So why are those keywords? Surface transportation and cargo in particular have been very concerned about insider threat and employee screening for years. Think about it, that makes a lot of sense. Millions of people ride surface transportation every day. Surface transportation has tremendous rigor in terms particularly of explosive detection, as Mr. Paterno mentioned, in high volume, high stress, very dynamic environments. And of course, nobody wants a multi-million ton train of 125 cars or so going out of control, for example, out of the Southern Rockies heading down to Barstow. Just like nobody wants all the trains in New York subway system bumping into each other, bearing in mind they're all computer controlled, and on and on. So insider threat has been a very serious concern in surface. We've had formally chartered working groups with the surface industry since 2005. Because of their concerns, we have documented capability gaps from the industry and what they'd like to see. Those are reflected to some degree in the problem statement. So this isn't coming out of nowhere. Cargo, 5,000 facilities more or less in the US handle cargo on a daily basis. 2,000 of those more or less, again, varies a few month by month, are certified facilities that can screen cargo off airport and have it loaded on airplanes directly with no further screening. So their bar's high. We've been working for over 10 years assisting airport cargo facilities in their screening and employee and insider threat activities. And then insider threat is one part of airport infrastructure, which is also in Mr. Paterno's mission space. He's one of our major clients these days. And we take a look at what you'd expect, fence lines and other things like that as part of the overall airport. Okay, thanks. Now if we go to the next slide. So what are we going to do to help out? I don't want to frighten anybody, but TSA works as a coherent team all the time. So we and our colleagues in ITF, they're one side of the mission space, we're the other. We work together very closely all the time. What you see here is how we're helping. We have tremendous knowledge of the marketplace all the time through numbers of activities we perform. We write functional checklists because we regulate technologies that can be used in air cargo. We also provide a tremendous amount of advice and assistance to our surface clients. And then we have several infrastructure protection test beds for airports, who are a relatively, in the past couple of years, new client for us. But we've received congressional direction to do that kind of work, and we're now in the middle of it, to include a couple of test beds. So what are we going to do? We're going to provide expertise. We're going to contribute market research. We're going to provide functional requirements checklists to our clients that they will use when they procure equipment for their insider threat work. And then we're also going to provide a certain amount of engineering support to the degree we can afford to our clients to assist them as they review vendor proposals. And your inputs are going to be coming into the ITF BAA, and we'll be participating in the process. And then we'll also providing these 4 functions in support of TSA's regulatory activities and in support of the issue statement. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Pryor. At this point, we're going to shift over to talk about some of the submission best practices, and these are based on the lessons learned over the past 4 broad agency announcement cycles. And for this, we've got Program Manager in the Innovation Task Force, Mr. Will Hastings. Will?
Hi, everyone. For those of you that have been on or attended Innovation Task Force Industry Days before, thanks for joining us again. My name is William Hastings. As Matt said, I'm a program manager in the Innovation Task Force, and a big part of what I do is industry engagement and solution identification. So as part of that, I've reviewed all of the submissions that have come into the last 3 broad agency announcements. And so I was asked if I could spend a few minutes talking with you on some submission best practices and sort of do's and don'ts when you're looking at submitting a white paper in response to TSA's IDEA BAA. So the first thing is to make sure that your white paper is addressing all the elements that it needs to within the proposal. It includes making sure that it has all of your company's information, is clearly articulating how the solution aligns to the problem statement that was asked, including providing history of you, the vendor's experience in providing that type of solution and any prior work you've done with government, and how you plan to facilitate the demonstration to include what goals and metrics you are hoping to achieve from that. Bear in mind as well that you need to highlight any costs that you believe would be associated with the demonstration, but only costs that you believe the government would have to assume in order to execute the demonstration. And keep in mind that ITF doesn't fund execution of our demonstrations. We work through a collaborative partnership with our industry stakeholders. So the only funding that ITF is able to provide is for certain exempt expenses for small businesses. So bear that in mind when you're putting together your presentation. Understand what ITF demonstrations are and what the life cycle is. So make sure that your proposal aligns to what ITF does in terms of a demonstration, which is to take a solution that is relatively mature and bring it out to an airport environment so that we can gain a better understanding of the solution and its capabilities and how it applies to TSA's mission, and hopefully also provide you, the vendor, an opportunity to get a better sense of how your technology solution performs in a live operational setting. Be clear about any costs or timeline factors that could impact the demonstration. So if the solution you don't feel is going to be ready for a significant amount of time from when you're submitting the proposal, or you feel that there are going to be significant funding hurdles associated with your proposal, please make sure that you submit those and are clear about them up front. It's not something that will be held against you, but it is something that we need to make sure that we're aware of, so that there's understanding and clear expectations for what the proposal is, so that we don't end up in a situation where something has been selected but isn't able to move forward for a significant amount of time. And unfortunately, we end up having to drop the proposal because of that. And last, and maybe most importantly, make sure that you ask questions prior to submission. So if there's anything that you don't know, don't understand, or unclear about with regards to submitting your proposal, please make sure to reach out to us and the contracting officers through the solicitation to pose your questions and get a formal response from TSA to help guide you in how best to go about your submission. With that, I will hand it back over to Melissa Conley, who's going to be moderating a panel on safe distance screening.
Okay, thanks, Will, so much. So I'm happy to be here moderating this panel. As Matt mentioned earlier in my opening remarks, I've been involved with the COVID response efforts here at TSA since March, and I wasn't lying. We really, with the help of the capability managers on this panel today, we really broke down each segment of the screening process and really thought through, what needs to be changed and how we can create, a safer environment for the traveling public as well as our officers. So with that being said, I would love for our panel members to introduce themselves. So starting off with Jason Hall, you want to give a quick introduction?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jason Hall. I'm the capability manager for accessible property. I've been with TSA for quite a long time now, probably 17 years, and held positions in what is now APM, as well as the Intelligence and Analysis Office, and now RCA. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Over to Dan Williams. Oh, hey, Dan, you're on mute.
My apologies. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dan Williams. I'm the on-person screening capability manager. Today we'll be going over what TSA OPS capability is, where it is currently, and where we plan on taking it in light of the new challenges presented by COVID-19. A little background about myself. I came out of OSO in the Ops Improvement Branch, transferring to RCA when it was created, and I have been with TSA since the beginning. And we look forward to participating in this panel. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. All right, last but not least, Kevin Chan.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Kevin Chan. I'm the Alarm Resolution Capability Manager. My responsibility is to developing and executing the alarm resolution roadmap to advance the material and non-material capability for TSA. I started with TSA in March 2018. My first job at TSA was the program manager for ITF to plan and executing technology demonstrations. I have been working as an AR alarm resolution capability manager since July 2019.
Great, thanks, Kevin. So my first question goes to each one of our panelists today, and we can start off with Jason Hall. So, how has this experience in the past couple of months dealing with the pandemic changed your perspective as to, the equipment and the processes that you deal with? Or, conversely, how has it reinforced what you're doing with your capability?
So I think as it relates to accessible property, one of the key initiatives that we've been moving toward over the last several years is increased detection capability while reducing false alarms. And that became even more important when COVID came out. Every time an alarm happens at the primary screening system, whether that be an AT X-ray or a CT, someone has to search that bag on the back end. And that means they've got to touch their belongings, they've got to open them. Also, the more that happens, that passenger interaction where the officer is face to face with the passenger happens more frequently. In addition to that, the automation that we've been looking to in the ASL systems, as well as automatic diverters on the back end of things, has really reduced the amount of times that an officer has to touch a bag to move it to an alarmed side, and also increases the efficiency so that social distancing can really happen on the fly without having to worry about backups happening as people are divesting, as well as recomposing themselves on the back end.
Great. Dan, you want to take a crack at this one?
Sure. So I think in light of the COVID pandemic, they has really adjusted their procedures and accelerated potential solutions with the reduction of obviously viruses and bacteria, while keeping both passengers and the officers safe while maintaining our security standards. Recently we've worked closely with the screening procedures branch on how to modify some processes to work in the new environment while remaining just as safe and secure. For example, we've pushed out a deployment of a fleet-wide upgrade. And this upgrade is expected to reduce the false alarm rate while leading to a reduction overall touch rate while being just as secure. So I think we're really pressing the way forward for a non-touchless, less alarm type environment in the OPS space.
Yeah. And Kevin.
Yes, instead for the alarm resolution area, we make the procedure change to minimize the pat-down process when also to conduct the alarm resolution process. That is try to stop the spread of the COVID-19. We also allowing passenger bringing their hand sanitizer into checkpoints at this moment. I think that's also helping the spread of the COVID-19. Finally, we implement a single ETD swab for alarm resolution. That also stop the spread of the COVID-19. Instead of what we're looking for in the future, in my mind for alarm resolution, we really looking for some capability able to scan full containers consumer without physically retrieve the sample, or also highly automating the alarm resolution process.
So for Jason and Dan, there's been a lot of talk about, the possibility of an antiviral or an antimicrobial bin, or the use of UV lighting to, help mitigate the spread of COVID. In your spaces, are you guys looking at this technology, and what are just your general thoughts on that?
So I can start on that area. So the antimicrobial bins, as we started to look into it, we actually found that there are roughly 30 airports that already have these bins in place today, which was a great find. In addition to that, we are looking at getting those bins out to more locations that don't already have them. And we are in conversations with many of the vendors that we deal with today on UV lighting. The reality of the situation is that officers now have to spend a lot of their time on disinfecting bins. And the more we can do to automate that process and allow the officers to spend time on doing the security related functions as opposed to cleaning related functions, I think the better we all are, because as passenger traffic starts to come back, we want to avoid having the lines where people are close together.
Thanks, Jason. Dan, any thoughts about, and I think it might be a little far-fetched, and I haven't seen any solutions for on-person UV sanitization, but any thoughts on the use of disinfectants or UV for the on-person screening?
So no, I think it's very different than accessible property screening as far as on-person goes, especially with the speed in which we have to search everyone's body as they go through the checkpoint. But we have always been very interested in screening at speed and also screening at a distance. I think this pandemic has just accelerated that process. We have had a lot of groundbreaking work in reduced divestiture requirements, material discrimination. Listen, the bottom line is nobody wants to be touched, and security officers don't want to touch people. So the more we get better at detecting what's on your body, and whether it be something nefarious or a cell phone, we would like to know that, right? Nobody's worried about a cell phone. Everybody's worried about dangerous things. So I think this has just accelerated our process to push vendors and the industry to bring us into a new forefront where we're not touching as many people because of a reduced false alarm rate because of better material discrimination.
Yeah, no, I echo those sentiments, Dan. Traveling public, I don't think they ever wanted to be touched, but especially now, reducing those false alarm rates on those on-person screening systems is just paramount. So let's pivot a little bit, guys, to the conversations that we've had with our international partners. What are some of the things that they're doing that we're looking to leverage, or what are some of the things that you've heard that they're doing that you're looking to partner with our international partners on? And Kevin, well, I'll let you guys choose who goes first.
Okay, I go first. Some system. So currently, we in alarm resolution we have a bottle liquid scanner deployed in the field to screen liquid explosive. I'm looking for next generation of BLS that able to screen through opaque and metal puddles. That's the new BLS capability I'm really interested in, and that also supporting the preventing the spread of the COVID-19. I mean, that's something I would like to share with the industry.
Great. Jason or Dan, any innovative ideas coming from our global counterparts that you think we'll partner on?
So I can go first. So I think we've talked to some of our international partners in the EU with some current equipment that they have fielded in the checkpoint. We share data regularly. We have telephone calls. Detection standards are a little bit different. We're looking to get those aligned across, friendly country trade space. But specifically, we're working with 2 companies out of the EU right now. And hopefully that will bring about better solutions for us here in the U.S.
Great.
And Melissa, I know in our space, a lot of the stuff we already talked about with the UV sanitization as well as the antimicrobial bins. However, there are other activities where UV sanitization is being done on the machine itself, or potentially even a standalone kind of UV box some countries are looking at in order to sanitize bins and kind of keep them in there while they're not being used before they're brought back to the beginning of the checkpoint. So a lot of different solutions out there folks are working on. Most of them are really coming from industry as far as where those innovations are coming into play.
Great, thanks, Jason. So I have another question for each one of you to address, and it has to do with you know, letting the solution providers who could be responding to this BAA. Is there anything in particular that you guys want them to know about your future needs, or you know, are there any potential roadblocks that you want to convey with regards to your different capability streams?
So I can start with this one. So I think for my specific capability area, I would say, you know, TSA currently has a process that we use for screening carry-on items, but that's not to say that those processes and procedures can't change. So as technology solutions are presented, we can find ways to integrate those into our existing processes and procedures, or modify our processes and procedures in order to accommodate those solutions. So as don't let what we're doing today limit the solutions that are presented. Allow us to figure out how to integrate those into our everyday business and figure out how those will work.
Yeah, that's a good point. Dan, any thoughts or roadblocks from your perspective? I know that you're up against, you know, challenging legislative issues in your portfolio.
So I think we'll continue to work the legislative front. What I would ask of vendors or people that wanted to participate is that really OPS is going modular at this point. So if you're a small business or you have a good idea, but you don't have the resources or the expertise to build a complete system, submit what you have, especially through ITF. There are various ways you can submit your solution to TSA because, as Jason said, you know, we will find a way to make it work if it's a good idea. We don't want to discourage people from having an algorithm development, but they don't have the machine to do it on. I think also people need to keep in mind in this pandemic environment that eventually air travel will come back. And we were at max capacity before this happened. We need to screen people faster and more effectively with very few false alarms. So that is the way we're going. That's the way we're going in the OPS trade space. Business as usual pre-COVID isn't good enough anymore. So we need to find out effective solutions to really move the detection standards, lower the false alarm rate, and move speed forward to the point where it becomes a seamless environment in every airport.
All right, so for my area, currently for alarm resolution, we still heavily rely on manual search and pat down to conduct alarm resolution process. I'm looking for some kind of standalone system that able to minimize or eliminate the pat down property search. These kind of solution also improve, reduce the spread of the COVID-19. That's what we're looking for. I also echo Jason and Dan's statements. Don't worry about your solution, just bring it to us. We will find a way to deploy in the field.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Throughout this time, I'd love to open it up for any questions that we have, and I think you guys can submit them through chat. Would love to hear what your thoughts are for those of you who are listening.
This is an opportunity for folks to take a look at the bottom of the screen. You'll see email address idea@tsa.dhs.gov, or the top chat in the YouTube box there. You can use the chat function and we'll pass the questions to the panel. We did have one question for Dan, looking to have more information regarding the EU solutions that you've been looking at.
So currently we have two companies that originated in the EU that are going through a QPL process, Roden Schwartz and Through Vision from the UK.
Great. At this point, I don't have any more comments from or questions from YouTube. I think our folks are sorting through the email inbox. Submit your questions now if you have a question.
Yeah, and Matt, I apologize. I probably should have said that, before we started the panel.
No worries. Question was asked, are we looking for and looking at any microwave technologies for disinfection?
I think I'm going to I'll start off answering that one. Just to echo what Jason and Dan and Kevin all said, I wouldn't be afraid to submit, your ideas. This pandemic has made us step outside of our, individual boxes and really think about the way we do things. So, I'm saying, we'll take a look at it. I think there's been, a lot of innovative solutions thrown our way as of lately and as a result of the pandemic. And I go into, the solution review with eyes wide open. So I wouldn't say that we're not going to take a look at certain things. And Jason and Dan, I'm not sure if you have any comments on that, or Kevin.
I think we'll look at anything that's viable.
Yeah, so I would say also anything that comes forward, we'll take a look at. I think the UV, the reason that was brought forward more immediately and first was because of its history and proven track record with decontamination in use in other areas. And so one of the comments that Matt made earlier was a lot of times innovation is applying something from somewhere else in a new way, and that's kind of where this is coming from. But no, I think we would look at all of it.
Yeah, same here.
So I threw out, Dan, earlier, what some of the legislative changes we're looking at. Can you comment a little bit further on that? We just got a question from the audience on that one.
Currently in the on-person screening trade space, the law states that there must be a body representative avatar. Currently, we're working to maybe modify that so we could use different images that do not show any kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Specific body parts or any kind of skin surface. The way the law was written like 12 years ago, it was a very different trade space. So now we're just seeing if we can get away from maybe a generic GUI type situation into like a CCTV image.
Yeah, and Dan, can you talk a little bit about the potential benefits? Like, what are some of the biggest operational concerns that lead to a pat down? Just kind of maybe explain that a little bit further.
Well, I think some of the problem is detection isn't quite where we want it to be. So we're working to improve that, but also false alarms. When you have a common GUI or our current Gumby blob, that's representative for a whole different set of body weights and masses that are going through the checkpoint. So the item that displays on the screen might not actually be in the exact spot where it is on your body, which would necessitate a pat down. So, so if we got away from a type of generic avatar that crunches everybody into one box, it would be very easy to find or be easier to distinguish on passengers for the TSOs to say, oh, that's a cell phone in your pocket. Can you please remove it? I don't have to touch you. Whereas now it just shows up as like a yellow icon on our current screen, and we don't know what it is. So as far as material discrimination, that would absolutely help out, and where it actually is pinpointed on a person's body as it displays on the screen would be helpful as well.
Thanks, Dan, for that. I think that's good clarification. Hold on, I'm getting more questions in, so just give me a second. Okay, so this one coming in, and I'll address it the best that I can, and Matt can jump in and help me. So the question is, are we looking at any solutions to take temperatures at checkpoints, or will there be health screening as part of standard travel? And so, Matt, jump in where I get this wrong, but we were taking a hard look at, we thought we were possibly going to get the temperature checking mission. It didn't come our way, but Matt and team did take a hard look at some solutions. And Matt, you're up, so I'll let you take it from here.
No worries. Thanks, Melissa. I'll say that, our job is to look at all kinds of innovative things, and temperature screening was one of those things that it has been identified as potentially being a layer of illness detection, not necessarily directly associated with COVID. And there was significant discussion between the interagency on this topic. Beginning of July, in partnership with Health and Human Services, Department of Transportation, and Department of Homeland Security, a document called the Runway to Recovery was released. And that outlines in the transportation sector a lot of the procedures and guidelines associated with response to COVID and recovery from that in the transportation sector. In the document, it does highlight temperature screening as an option to be considered as a layer in part of the process of travel. And it encouraged airports and airlines to look at that. We've been in close contact with our airline and airport partners and collaborating with them on lessons learned, as we have with our international partners. I know that our friends in Canada up north have implemented the temperature screening protocol, and a number of folks are looking at it in different ways. There are airports internationally that are doing COVID testing or COVID requirement testing before arrival at their airport. And so as the situation evolves, we'll surely adapt into what we're asked to do. But at this time, TSA has not been asked to do that work at this point. Thanks, Melissa. You may be muted. I should say, while Melissa's audio is connecting, there are a number of questions, a couple of questions that were asked that I'm going to take at the end. They're general ITF questions, and we'll get those as well in lieu of the capability managers. I don't think we're seeing any other questions coming in at this point. So at this point, I'd like to thank the panel members and Melissa for joining us today and working the panel. I think we got a lot of good discussion, a lot of good understanding of the problem statements. I know, it's okay, Melissa. One last question that we'll take for this panel, we just got via YouTube. Will we be interested in millimeter wave handheld capabilities for pat-down purposes?
Yes, I'm interested. Yeah, as long as you can minimize the pat-down, I'm interested for alarm resolutions.
Outstanding. One last question, I think, and then we'll move off. Sorry, just came in. Are we looking at biometrics for increasing passenger screening speed? Unfortunately, our identity management capability manager didn't join us on the panel today. I will tell you that he is working very diligently with industry and with opportunities to understand how we could incorporate biometrics into our identity management process. in that we identify a passenger in the checkpoint, reducing the need to handle and touch IDs and boarding passes. So I think that's going to be a great component to look at how we could in the future streamline that process. We've got some lab testing and process in that area, and hopefully we'll have some exciting updates on the technology as that progresses. Thank you, capability managers, for joining us. At this point, our program manager, Will Hastings, is going to take the helm for the next stakeholder perspectives panel. This is going to be a discussion on the system integration for dynamic screening. Will, I'll let you introduce your panel members and take it from here.
Thanks, Matt, and hopefully all of you can hear me okay. If you are on my panel, could you please make sure that you are not on mute and that your video is sharing? Great, and why don't we have each one of you introduce yourselves? Let's start with Mr. Tafford.
Hi, thanks, Will. Good afternoon. I am Todd Trafford. I currently serve at TSA as the Acting Deputy Assistant Administrator for Acquisition Program Management. And in that role, I'm the Principal Advisor to the Assistant Administrator for APM, Mario Wilson, who you met earlier this afternoon. APM is responsible for TSA's acquisition programs and for ensuring that the security technologies and processes that we deliver out to end users meet the overall mission, vision, goals, and objectives of both TSA and the department. I joined TSA in 2004 and have previously served in senior leadership positions in IT, security operations, risk-based security, and law enforcement.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Elmore?
Hi, I'm Douglas Elmore. I'm the Field Information Systems Capability Manager. It's a new position that started in November of last year. I've been with TSA since 2017. In my own career, I've held positions in DoD, FAA, intelligence, commercial, nonprofit, very wide variety of organizations performing IT strategic planning and innovation development. Big focus for field information systems management is some 20 to 40 applications and systems that are deployed in the field that have a variety of manual and automated processes that support them.
Thank you, sir. Last but not least, Mr. Karras.
I'm Mike Karras. I am the TSA Chief Enterprise Architect and also the Chief Data Officer. I've been with TSA since 2002 in various capacities. Obviously, as we look forward in this, coming back to some comments that were made by Dan and also by Stacy in this space about being able to bring all this stuff together, we have to look at it from an enterprise perspective to create that ecosystem that Dan was talking about, not only to improve our security postures, but also to enhance the traveling public's experience through the process as well as increase efficiencies. So look for a lot to come from industry in that space. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So we are here to talk about systems integration and dynamic screening. For those of you who are watching this presentation, you can go ahead and submit any questions you might have on that topic for the panel, and we will get to them towards the end of the panel. To start, TSA is asking for dynamic screening at a checkpoint so that we can screen passengers in any screening lane based off of their risk score. So allowing us to get out of dedicated screening spaces for specific risk categories, better integration between those various pieces of equipment so that we can adjust screening equipment as necessary based off of security requirements for that specific passenger type. And on top of that all, we're asking for it to be done on an open architecture platform so that we can integrate multiple vendors into that end state and solution. It could be argued that this would be more easily achieved if you just used a single large vendor to provide all of the equipment and systems at a checkpoint. Why do you feel that an open architecture platform and the ability to integrate multiple vendor solutions into a checkpoint end state is important for TSA in the near and long term to achieve our dynamic screening and integration goals? Mr. Trafford, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So we honestly need to leverage the capabilities across industry. And to remain innovative, we need to be able to utilize the best technology that is emerging. And that's not going to be found in one vendor. And it's going to be important for us to be able to determine which of those technologies is most appropriate for us and be able to then easily integrate them into our system based on emerging threats, based on emerging technologies.
Thanks. Doug, did you have anything that you wanted to add as you're looking at this from a capability manager perspective?
Yes, so when I look at this from the capability management perspective, I can see really three things going on, and we need to look at the whole enterprise as a system. It's important to look at the transportation security equipment and maximizing that, but we need to think much broader. So I think about things from field data modernization, or eventually getting to the point we're looking at data as a service. So if we can look at data as a service, we can offer that for a number of different applications. There's also the cybersecurity issue of technology and the information. And then finally, it's really important to look at the business process as well, how we can modernize that, how we can add information technology to innovate and automate those systems. When we're looking at the data, in the past, we've looked a lot at telemetry data or data about the health and count of those technologies, but we want to get beyond that. We heard in previous parts of today talking about enabling data sharing, analytics, machine learning, integrating technology, being flexible to get the right technology, evolving, and ultimately getting to kind of real-time optimization. We can't do that in our present state of just capturing telemetry data. We need to think of data as a service. And of course, we have to secure the equipment. So innovation around operating systems that allow our cybersecurity policies to put in place is going to be really imperative to have data transport.
So Doug, you had mentioned in there, the importance of being able to move into some of these newer IT fields like data as a service. And I think more generally, sort of the concept of the Internet of Things and an integrated and interconnected checkpoint that functions as a cohesive unit. Mike, I really want to get your thoughts and perspective on what you think industry needs to know and understand about what are some of the concerns, hurdles, and prerequisites from a cybersecurity standpoint that they need to be thinking about when coming forward with these integrated solutions?
When we take a look at that, we have to start recognizing that each of these screening technology solutions brings something very special to the table. But something even more special can be achieved when we start interconnecting all of them, and when we get to the areas to be able to start looking at machine learning, analytics, and artificial intelligence. But it's not just applying those capabilities inside one stovepiped solution at a single checkpoint, but rather when something is learned in one place, that data, that information can be exchanged with other systems, with other machines within a terminal, within an airport, or better yet, even across the nation. So that expands the capability of doing things. In order to allow that to happen, though, we have to be very careful and this is where the cyber element comes in very strongly, in addition to the creation of data standards and information exchange standards, of the concept of Internet of Things. We can't have something bad happen in one screening technology platform that is then easily transmitted to other technology platforms at a checkpoint or at a terminal or at an airport. That would be a bad day, not only for TSA, but for all of the vendors represented in that space as well. So the data exchanges, the equipment, the operating systems, all need to be built with the concept of an Internet of Things, but with the cyber built in from day one, not bolted on as an afterthought, but intended to be secure, not only in the providing of data, but also in the ability to accept data from other platforms so that they can alter, be it their algorithms, their detection strengths, etc., with inside their particular platform.
Thanks, Mike. And you touched on a couple of great things there that I want to follow up on, one of which was expanding on the need for integration standards and communication protocol standards across systems in addition to cybersecurity standards. Doug, when you're looking at it from a capability roadmap perspective, how do you see those things becoming more firmly established in terms of evolving TSA requirements when it comes to intersystem communication protocols and cybersecurity when we're looking at long-term capability development?
Yeah, right now we've taken a step back to do a security study on data and how we're managing data and what our potential needs are and our gaps. So we've previously done studies that said we have this data to transport, but we've never looked at the data from an enterprise perspective. And as Mike has talked about, what we can learn at an enterprise level, we can potentially see trends and threats. There's the things we don't know that can pop up. So we are taking a step back and looking at data here in the next year and what its potential uses are. So we're kind of in the beginning of this roadmap, and potentially that will help, within a year drive requirements and hopefully allow us to develop and get input on recommended standards for information exchange, information management, and two-way cybersecurity.
Thanks, Doug. Todd, I think for a lot of vendors, over an APM and acquisition is sort of where the rubber meets the road on a lot of these things in terms of requiring open architecture, requiring the ability to communicate across systems, requiring the ability to support independently developed and third-party algorithms. What do you want the vendor industry to know about where TSA is headed in these areas when they think about developing future products or future platforms?
Well, I think everybody should be thinking that whatever equipment, security equipment that we're deploying at the checkpoint will in the future need to be not only connected, but probably interconnected. And if we think back to the last panel, if we're going to safely operate our equipment, we also need to start thinking about the possibilities for remote screening. And when we think about that, then we have to think about the data transport and whether or not, given the data that we need to transfer and how data intensive we are with some of our TSC, we need to probably be starting to think about things like edge computing. What can we do, say, on site or in close proximity to an airport versus back at a centralized data center? So there are a number of areas where we can innovate for the future to both improve the security effectiveness of our operations and also the safety of operating our TSE and the safety that is provided to the traveling public.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Todd. Mike, so I know that TSA recently released back on January 7th 17 key requirements for cybersecurity IT standards that we're looking for vendors to start incorporating into their solutions. I know that from your perspective from prior conversations, this is really sort of the first step in trying to publish and make sure that we've got good visibility on cybersecurity. And the real need for in the future, when we're talking about the ability to do remote screening or cross-airport integration, how important it is to have strong cybersecurity. Can you touch on sort of what some of those cybersecurity standards requirements that are going to be required to enable that future vision look like, and where vendors can go to get more information on what federal standards and requirements are?
Well, when we take a look at those standards that TSA published, that was published out of our Chief Information Security Officer space. And, kind of to echo his words, that's a starting point, not an ending point. And I think that sometimes has been a little bit of a struggle as people look through. And to echo what I said earlier, cyber needs to be designed into the different TSE technology up front. Our adversaries in this space are very creative. Maintenance is done via USB thumb drives, which are plugged in. Well, how do you make sure something isn't bad from a maintenance technician's perspective when they plug that in to knowingly properly service a piece of equipment and it had something nefarious on there? And then the next thing you know, it's not just that system, but it's other systems that are impacted. So this needs to be built in to the overall end-to-end system. It's not just a point type of activity that needs to occur when addressing the various cybersecurity elements that TSA has published out there. Obviously, the ability to continue to update code, to patch code, to identify vulnerabilities and weaknesses within that code. A lot of people, take a look at the white hat type efforts that go on with being able to, penetrate your own systems, find your own problems up front and identify them before someone else does, is also very important to the engineering and the construction of solutions as they are being developed, as opposed to then later on trying to address those things.
Thank you, Mike. Today in our checkpoint environment, I would say that we have a relatively small handful of vendors that are providing us the majority of our security equipment. And most of those systems don't have any sort of integration with each other really whatsoever, and require physical, like was just talked about, physical upgrades and maintenance a lot of times in person. What do you think the future of that checkpoint environment is going to look like from a multi-vendor perspective in terms of, do you see that field narrowing or expanding over time? And what do you see that inter-vendor communication relationships looking like?
Who did you want to answer that?
You can go ahead, Mike. Thank you.
Okay. I think it's going to expand. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for innovation, not only with the existing vendors, but also with newer and smaller companies that are looking to come forward in the space. As you start looking at opening up the architecture to the open architecture of the different pieces of equipment, you can get into a lot of creativity out there in terms of people, in terms of algorithms for identification or detection of items, in terms of material densities, etc. And so there's a lot of opportunity. There's opportunity to expand when we get into the space of being able to start to apply analytics or machine learning across the data brought forward by all of the systems to identify threats as well as to help resolve them quicker. If we can have one machine figure out what a cell phone in a certain pocket of a certain type of individual looks like, and we can start to share that quickly across multiple platforms, then it starts to allow for an enhanced, screening experience by the traveling public going through. So there's a lot of opportunity in that space, and I think a lot of folks would love to step in to those opportunities with their unique, innovative ideas.
Thanks, Mike. Todd, how do you see sort of the future of acquisition dealing with things like third-party algorithms? How do you think TSA in the future is going to approach third-party developed solutions like that and look to integrate them into our ecosystem?
Yeah, so we're certainly looking at how we integrate third-party algorithms, how we integrate third-party testing, how we qualify multiple vendors, getting back to our previous point. And, ideally, as we standardize the interfaces for our connectivity and we build, to Mike's point, our security into the actual TSC rather than trying to address it on the back end, then that allows us much more flexibility to deal with multiple vendors, even for performing the same types of security screening. And that's an advantage to us in being able to tailor the equipment that we are deploying while still ensuring that all of the equipment deployed meets all of our standards.
Thank you. We have some questions coming in. So to start, we had a question on YouTube regarding the current ACI Europe and TSA paper on open architecture for security systems in relationship to cybersecurity. Do any of you have anything in particular that you wanted to comment or mention regarding that? Mike, anyone? I guess anyone familiar with the paper?
I'm familiar with it. Again, that came out of our Chief Information Security Officer shop. I know he's not a part of the panel, so I will attempt to address it, or if someone has a specific follow-up to it, make sure it is addressed. That paper was, as I understand it, jointly created in collaboration with our European partners. And what we're trying to do, they were trying to do, I should say there, is to try to drive a universal standard and a universal approach in that space, as opposed to, just one area, one nation, if you will, attempting to drive something, so that it would benefit industry as a whole in understanding that, the solution we're going after is collaborative in nature and has a much larger market space, a much larger market play.
Okay, I've got another question coming in, and I think this might be a good one for Doug. Are you interested in artificial intelligence systems that leverage data to do security and alleviate wait times across the country's busiest airports?
Yes, I believe we would be. Again, we're kind of really in the early stages of this, but I have some colleagues in some of the other groups that have been looking at this, and it is a topic of interest. One of the things that's also of interest is how we can make our transport layer more efficient. Imagine the size of the enterprise. We don't have large pipes from every airport to every airport. So we also need to be looking at how we can be very efficient. And I think local AI applications might also help us make sure that we only send the data over that we need.
Thank you. Matt, did we have any other questions come in that you wanted to bring up? I know that we are just about out of time.
I think one last question that might be suitable for Todd is this solution intended to be completely separate from, or how does it interact with STIP?
So I think that, STIP is the connectivity approach that we're taking now. But I think, as was said in, one of the earlier presentations, innovation doesn't necessarily have to be implementing a new or replacement technology. It could be something that we incorporate into an existing acquisition program, and STIP is one of our existing acquisition programs. So as we're thinking about innovating for the future, I think we would want to consider both what would be enhancements for a STIP approach, as well as innovations around all of the things that we've talked about. So it's certainly in the near term, we would want anything to be compatible with STIP, but that should not rule out folks coming forward with innovative suggestions about how we might do things better. That's really what we're looking for, through these kinds of engagements, is for people to bring forward things that we may not have thought about, things that are emerging. Many of our acquisition programs were started several years ago, and the technology and the approaches that were available then are not necessarily those that are available now. So we want to constantly be looking at how we improve those programs.
Thank you so much, Todd. And I think we are just about out of time. So I wanted to thank the panelists once again for your participation. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us in the Industry Day. And for those of you who are watching or online, if we didn't get a chance to get to your questions, you can feel free to send them to the idea@tsa.dhs.gov inbox, and we will look to get you responses. I will hand it over to Matt.
Thank you, panelists. Thank you, Will, for moderating that session. Fantastic discussion on where we can head to integrate our technologies in the checkpoint and leverage the power of data to drive a more efficient and effective screening process. With that, there were a couple of questions that we received in the YouTube chat that I will address now that were more general BAA questions. If you have any other general questions, feel free to submit those now, and I'll take those as well. The first question is, what is covered by ITF funding? So as Will highlighted in the submission best practices, we look for industry partners to identify costs that they have, but also essentially cost limiters. From a funding perspective, we typically, this phrase is a somewhat corny one that I often use, we typically approach it as a strictly public-private partnership in which we fund learning. So the private sector partner, the vendor, you come to us with a great solution and idea, and then we get it partnered with our lab testers, the same testers who will test products for procurement or acquisition activity. And we will characterize that system, and we will bring officers and human performance teams in to take a look at the system. And then we will also then fund the testing process once we get to the field. The equipment portion is typically done through a bailment agreement and or memorandum, and we work through that process collaboratively. But again, the funding is really targeted for the services that we provide in the process. In some cases, and you'll see this in the BAA documentation, it's available on beta.sam.gov. We will fund a small business in terms of reimbursement for travel related expenses or shipping related expenses, because we recognize the need for capital in many cases in a small business setting. So we want to try and partner well with those folks. So I mentioned beta.sam.gov. That's the official mechanism for posting and receiving information about federal selection opportunities or business opportunities. If you'd like the detailed link, please use that register button or the idea@tsa.dhs.gov inbox to connect with us, and we'll make sure we get you that information so you have it and can go out and find it and look at that. Within that posting, there is a large document that is the BAA announcement, and it goes through in detail all the problem statements that we've talked about today, some of the factors that you need to consider while you're applying, and how to apply in terms of mechanisms. The things we talked about today are covered in that document. One of the other questions we received was vendor identified solutions that are not physical in nature. I'll tell you, Innovation Task Force, while often we end up fixating or focusing on the technology or the touch kind of products, we often also look at process related solutions or people solutions that are innovative and different than how we do business today. We welcome those solutions into our submission process, and we'll review those along the line with everything else. we'll approach those in a partnership fashion and look at how we can execute a memorandum, non-disclosure agreements and things like that we want to put in place to protect your intellectual property as well as ours. And then we'll look at how we could partner to execute that concept in various different formats and ways. So we welcome those solutions. That problem statement associated with vendor identified solutions also is kind of a catch-all, if you will. If you have something that is relevant and you're not quite confident that it fits the problem statement, you can submit to that vendor identified. The problem statements are there to identify the key areas that we're looking for under this opening in this particular time and this particular moment, the key capability gaps or areas that we're looking for help in terms of problem solving. I think that's the big stuff I wanted to cover from a questions perspective that was submitted via the chat and email box. If there's any else that are coming in, I'll happily address those now. Give folks a minute. If there's one more that comes in, we'll take a look at it. But at this point, I'd like to start wrapping up, and I'll start by saying an incredible thanks goes out to the team on ITF that put this day together. Really, a lot of presentation preparations happen, a lot of dry runs. This is, I know, for us, the very first time we've done a virtual platform like this, integrating several technologies in together to virtually bring you this event. I think it's gone relatively smoothly. I hope it's gone smoothly for you as well. I know that there may have been some buffering issues or connection issues. This will be posted on the TSA YouTube account with links and things like that available. And so hopefully you'll get a chance to review it and potentially see that. We'll post the slides to the broad industry announcement on sam.gov for your access as well. I also want to thank all the participants and the speakers today. You took a chunk out of your day to be able to attend the event today and bring us information and share that with our industry partners and hope that we can drive future innovation out there. So I really want to thank you for taking that time today, whether it be the Chief Innovation Officer, our EAA for Operations Support, the Chief Data Officer, our folks from Acquisition Program Management, incredible partnerships and collaboration that we couldn't do this work without. And then I also want to thank you, the attendee, for coming in today and sharing your time with us. This was a great, I think, opportunity to learn about some of your questions and give you a chance to see into some of the information associated with the problem statements that we have posted out there on BAA5. So really big thank you for taking the time to attend today, and thank you for joining us. One last question I did see come in. I see other BAAs out there for TSA. What are the differences? So within TSA, there are multiple different mechanisms and moving parts in the agency. The Chief Innovation Officer kind of looks across the umbrella of the agency and the innovation activities that we perform. ITF is really focused on the mission execution and our user base and the end user community and how we execute screening. That's kind of the key focus of the mission area, if you will. We can look across the area. We've worked with the Federal Air Marshals, currently doing some demonstrations with them now. With this BAA, the idea, it's innovative demonstrations for enterprise advancement. And so this is the innovation demonstration kind of opportunity for the mission space. And so we ask that if you've got an innovation kind of related solution and you want to put in there, do it. The person that asked that question, feel free to rewind earlier. There was a slide that our assistant administrator from Acquisition Program Management joined us, Mario Wilson, and he talked through some of the other openings that are available. Each one has a little bit of a unique, different focus. And so when you look and open a broad agency announcement, just take a look at the scope and kind of the background on why this is being posted at this time. We also use RFIs within the agency to make sure that we reach out to industry and do some crowdsourcing, if you will, and knowledge sharing opportunities for industry to give us input. So a lot of great data exchange there, a lot of great opportunities, and we encourage you to get familiar with all of them. With that, I think we're going to wrap up today. Thank you all very much. I think the last slide has got the key contact information that we'll share. Visit us at tsa.gov/ITF. Take a look at the content there. We've got another, I think, animation about joining us on the journey to seamless. And we look forward to seeing you all again in a future industry event, industry engagement. Thanks again for your attendance. Have a good day.